any of them.
Imagine bringing your side project to life just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, a complete...
You said mercury.
That it caused neurological injuries.
Which one?
He's just listing one of them.
Pierre, you said mercury.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Mechanistically link that to a cause.
IOM about the Verstraeten study.
The what?
The Verstraeten study. This is the VSD study.
Soccer players on the same question.
Yeah.
You think that there would be a huge risk
It's not a
autism in the past?
Vaccine.
I never knew, and I rest of the industry, these guys are going to be. The New England Journal of Medicine says so.
Chill.
And so this is why it's very difficult to debate, because the science that I'm bringing forth is that is censored, and what they're bringing forth is that is what.
Move on to the next topic. Stephen Pierre.
All right, start this a bit early. We're back. Fully rested, ready to actually analyze this debate. We have on the one side Dave Arena, Dan Wilson on the pro-vax, pro-Fauci, pro-LGBT, woke, Democrat side. On the right side, we got Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now we have Steve Kirsch and Pierre Corey. And they are on the anti-vax, Giga Chad, lab leak, vaccines cause autism side of the debate. So in the previous first part of this that I watched, they basically argued over whether or not there was any evidence for vaccines causing autism. And essentially, the anti-vax side had no answer to that question. All they had was like anecdotal stories and coincidences, and at best, maybe you can say correlations, but they didn't have any mechanism they could point to. They didn't have like a broad base of data that they could refer to. A lot of the studies they brought up, by the way, they didn't even read, and the other, the pro-vaccine side were able to illustrate that they had more familiarity with the concepts and the work that the anti-vax side was citing. So it was not a good look. But now we move on to question number 2. So let's see what question number 2 is going to be.
Get to start. Let's try to let each other finish their what they want to say a little better than the last round, and then we'll get responses. So the next question is, new measles outbreak, is misinformation to blame? First to go is going to be Pierre and Steve.
So I assume what's implicit in that question is that people are misinformed, not getting vaccinated, and that's what's caused the epidemic? Is that the better phrasing of the question? Is that what you guys agree with? Misinformation is to blame for the rise in measles?
Plays a role.
Okay. So, first of all, there's been measles outbreaks all the time, every year. This was definitely the biggest one in 25 years. It's not unique to the U.S. In fact, measles has been exploding around the world. 27,000 cases in the UK, over 100,000 across Europe. They're popping up everywhere, sometimes 30x to what they were before the pandemic. Why has this been increasing over these last few years? That's a question I want to.
It might be that the anti-vaccine misinformation, because it's on the internet, isn't confined to just one country, right? So him bringing up this point doesn't really dispute the argument that the other side is making.
Put in your head. Interestingly, and I was shocked to learn this, you know what the U.S. has done pretty well? In Texas, there was like 1,000 cases. There's 12 counties in Texas with not one case, and yet the Texas Health and Human Services kept saying that this is the most contagious thing ever, and that, scaring everyone. They even talked about lockdowns. They want to vaccinate everybody. It actually wasn't that bad, and no one died. But yet, going back to my point of how pharma controls this whole thing, what pharma's really good at, oh, by the way, in those things that work for pharma, don't forget the media. The media will amplify messages to you, to scare you, to get you to do things. They will blame those who have vaccine hesitancy. This is why my life I've been attacked, because I'm coming out with inconvenient scientific opinions to the pharmaceutical industry. So was misinformation to blame? I don't know. Ask Europe, ask UK, ask all of those other countries, some of the most highly COVID vaccinated countries in the world.
Maybe.
And there's been an article in Bloomberg, which I actually wrote a rebuttal to, where they literally discussed in the article, they can't figure out how the best COVID performing countries are getting hit the hardest with measles. Maybe they have a mechanism for that. Why would suddenly all these countries that had super high COVID vaccination rates are now seeing measles like they've never seen in history?
I thought he just said that this happens throughout all of history, which is it, right?
All right, Dave and Dan.
All right. I'll go first. So just real quick, I know we moved on from this topic, but I would want to just point out, when it comes to autism in relation to MMR vaccines, these two would like to tell stories about suppression of American institutions and capture, but there have been studies all around the world confirming that MMR does not cause autism, including one study from Denmark using 657,461 children studied over the course of a period of 11 years, showing no link between MMR and autism. Now, moving on to measles and the current outbreaks and misinformation, we know that where measles is the worst, vaccines are not. So in areas of the world that have the lowest vaccine coverage, that's where you see the most measles deaths, the most measles cases, and the most measles hospitalizations. That's true in the current outbreak in Gaines County, Texas, where I believe the vaccination rate for measles was about 82%, and the epicenter of the outbreak was a pocket of mostly unvaccinated communities, mostly Mennonites. So we know that we don't have to make up stories about, oh, they're suppressing data and this group is shady and they want money, which, by the way, only one group on this stage sells supplements, and it's not Dave and I.
Who sells supplements?
Or expensive telehealth.
You guys don't
accuse me of selling a supplement?
You guys don't
Get
sell
your facts
supplements?
straight, dude.
You guys don't sell supplements anymore?
Don't ask me. You seem to know, huh?
You guys don't sell
You
supplements
just accuse
anymore?
me of selling supplements?
Do you not?
I'm curious if he does. I don't know if he was just stereotyping them, because so often these kind of people do sell some kind of homeopathic or homeopathic medicine, or their own treatment plan, or their own self-help guru kind of thing. However, I got a little confused by the point he was making. I don't know if he was making the point, I believe this is what he was trying to make, that if you actually look at where you see reduced vaccinations, actually where you see cases that are higher, which would be a direct refutation of what the other guy had said. I'm going to look this up real fast, because I don't want to take either of their words for it. Interesting. So you see right here, in areas where vaccination coverage drops below 95% threshold for herd immunity. So this is something I didn't really know about, but it makes a little bit of sense. And I actually don't know it from the sentence here, but it's something that sparks a light bulb in my brain. herd immunity, I wonder if there is a vaccination rate that is studied for every particular disease, right? But it seems like here they know that for measles, they need a 95% vaccination rate. And I know that the other guy, Dan Wilson, this guy, the Afro guy, I'm gonna call him Afro Man for the purpose of this debate. Afro Man brought up that whatever rural county that he was referring to had a vaccination rate that would drop to 85%. So it makes sense that you would have an outbreak there in that area. See right here, even with Europe, because the other question is, the other guy brought up, oh, how do you explain like all these other vaccinated countries have the biggest outbreaks? So it looks like vaccine hesitancy was also an issue they were dealing with in Europe that has about possible reduced vaccine uptake. So yeah, you've had less vaccination in general because of these anti-vaccine narratives. And so you've had an outbreak of measles both in the United States and Europe, likely due to people not getting vaccinated.
Not advertise supplements?
Have I ever sold a supplement? Do your research. Do get your shit straight. What the hell is this?
Yes,
You want to
Steve.
start accusing me of stuff that you have no idea?
Okay, let's see. I'm curious. Did he? So this guy is, I think, Pierre Corey. Oh, what the fuck? Wow, this guy. See, that's the thing. You have to realize some of these people are absolutely just straight up blatant liars. Promoted various supplements, often in combination with other drugs, as treatments for viruses like COVID-19, RSV, and influenza. So that's his whole thing. He seems like he makes a career out of debunking, the established science and medicine on these particular diseases, and then uses that in order to hawk his own, like, snake oil. I've heard about this actually. There was a previous debate that I was in where I had to look into this alliance because of the claims that they're making. Vitamin C, okay, already right off the bat. So vitamin C is a big meme online. Basically, my understanding is you don't really need to take vitamin C supplements. The only reason you need to take them, it's not like, oh, the more you take, the better your immune system will be. It only becomes an issue when you have a vitamin C deficiency. If you have a vitamin C deficiency, by all means, you should take, vitamin C or whatever. But for most people, they don't have a vitamin C deficiency. So adding more on top isn't really going to do anything. Zinc, vitamin D3. See, a lot of this is just kind of like stuff where, again, unless you have a deficiency in these things, you don't necessarily need to take them. Vitamin D3. So I don't know if necessarily the stuff he's giving you is bad for you per se, but it is kind of just like spinning a narrative so that he could sell you supplements for this shit that you don't necessarily need, right? Nacokinase, promoting miracle pills containing natokinase on the messaging app Telegram. This is part of a scam. What the hell's nacokinase or kinase? Natakinase, natokinase. It is sold as a dietary primary for potential cardiovascular health, are often formulated with a K12 or K2 removed. Okay. Again, I don't know if any. On the one hand, I'll say, I mean, at least he's not selling you stuff that's necessarily bad for you, but at the same time, I just don't necessarily think you need any of this stuff, and it seems like it's just a grift to sell you shit.
Idea. Bring something real if you're going to accuse me. I don't want to hear this nonsense.
So do you not
Basically, it's an elaborate commercial for Flintstone vitamins, is what this guy does.
Have you not
What do you charge
advertised
for a
and tried to sell,
consultation, Pierre?
Spikevax supplements?
You're going to tell me I've sold a supplement?
I'm asking
I
you.
think you got the wrong
Steve
guy.
sold
You're not
supplements.
Crashout.
You
Can you
charge
say yes or no?
$1,600 for a consultation.
What's that?
Sorry.
You charge
I
expensive.
work for a living.
Notice too that if he definitely didn't sell supplements, it'd be really easy for him to go, no, I don't. But he actually doesn't say no, he doesn't. He just gets like all like offended, like, oh, I can't believe you would say this. I can't believe you're asking me this. I can't believe you insinuate this. Okay, well, do you sell supplements? I mean, I can't believe you're even asking me that. You know, it's like, you know, if you didn't, you could just say no.
spend a lot of time with patients. How is that selling a supplement?
Telehealth.
I didn't
I'm
say
a
supplement.
physician.
This guy.
Telehealth physician.
Sorry, what supplement am I selling?
Is that
Sorry, what?
What supplement am I selling? I'm not aware that I'm selling.
Dude, the
a
Wayback
supplement.
Machine exists, man.
The nattokinase supplement? Does the audience know about this nattokinase supplement?
Guys, he's confusing us with the caller.
You guys don't endorse the wellness company in any of your content?
Yeah. Love the wellness company.
You don't think that supplement is good?
It's nonsense. Keep
Sorry,
going.
Okay, good. We agree on something. We agree that the nattokinase supplement
We
is
agree that you're
is
wrong
garbage.
in making a false accusation. Thank you.
If I made a false accusation about you selling supplements, then I would take that back.
Appreciate
But
it.
we agree that the SpikeVax supplement with nattokinase is garbage. We agree on something. Great.
Yeah.
No?
How's your eye, by the way? Getting better?
No.
No.
No, I'm permanently blind.
So
Thanks for asking.
it's a terrible supplement, right? Untested.
I do not sell supplements. You sell.
Oh shit, so I'm reading into this. Apparently this guy went blind in one eye after taking a spike detox supplement. So it sounds like potentially he doesn't sell them anymore, but he was probably using them and suggesting them prior to losing his goddamn vision like a fucking moron. And these are the side effects they don't tell you about, right? They're always going to isolate like one or two story out of a couple million stories where somebody has an adverse reaction. And then they'll hawk their own stuff, you know, as an alternative to that without telling you that there's side effects to these things too, and they're potentially worse for you. The hell's a spike detox? Ultimate Spike Detox, the wellness company. Okay, interesting.
You said I sold supplements. I do not sell supplements.
Okay, so untested supplements very bad. At least we'll come away
can
with
agree
that.
on that.
Untested, unregulated supplements are bad. We'll just come away from this with that.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
So you like to tell
It's completely off topic.
you like to tell stories about it's not off topic because you're talking about corruption and
because
and,
we're talking about the measles outbreak, and suddenly
you guys brought up-
shifted it to
and-
whether I sell supplements or not.
and
I
you
mean,
guys
I don't get
but
how-
you guys
how
brought
we're
up
there.
conflicts of interest and profiting off of stuff.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you got to admit that people who sell misinformation also profit greatly from it.
Actually, I'm making a fraction of what I was making before as a high-tech executive.
As do I. I've lost an incredible amount, my whole career, my reputation, and a lot of money. So you guys want to call me a grifter? Get your facts straight.
That's bullshit.
Just because you see me on like social media or something, you think that makes me rich? I do not profit over my personal profile. I'm a physician.
Maybe we can compare
I opened
net worth
I
later.
opened a practice dedicated to the treatment of the COVID vaccine injured.
Okay, we
And
can
I'm
look up
immensely
net
busy
worth.
with
Yeah,
that.
hawking
So,
ivermectin. Yeah,
Let's
that's-
try to
that's-
get back, let's
so
try
back
to
to
get back
pretty
to
good shit.
measles, guys.
Back to measles. We can talk about stories of people suppressing data and all these boogeyman stories, but if you look around the world, in reality, measles deaths, hospitalizations, and cases are worst where the vaccine is not.
3 deaths in Texas, by the way. He lied.
Yeah, do you guys?
by the way,
are you
He
guys
said
saying,
no one died
By
in
the way,
Texas.
so-
Are you guys saying nobody died of
Two
measles?
of them, I was personally tasked with doing the expert medical review. They did not die of measles. That's one.
Bullshit.
The third.
Okay, wait,
oh, so
what did they die of, and how do you know?
This is juvenile. So you want to
So,
call bullshit
I'm
when
sorry.
I spent literally
I'm sorry,
15
wait.
hours reviewing records?
Are you
This
saying?
is not- this
Are you
is not
saying you
credible.
determined the cause of death?
What's that?
Are you saying you determined the cause of death?
With the medical records.
Have you ever done a medical record review?
So,
Like
so
with
I'm
autopsy?
sorry.
Have you looked
I'm
at the
sorry.
medical
I'm sorry. You revealed.
That's quite a claim. Okay, so what's this guy's name again? Corey. How do I even look this up? Okay, let's
their
see what
medical
he says
records, or
first.
you actually determined their cause of death and
I
reported it to
came
the
to a
county.
conclusion as to cause of death, which was the
So you
task
did
that I
not.
put
So
forward.
you were not.
This is the conversation we're gonna have.
Yes. So you're not. So you're not report. You did not report the death to the county and say this was the cause of death. You looked at the medical records and had a different opinion.
I have a different opinion, yes, and I can tell you.
wonder why that would
There
be.
it is. There it is. I had a feeling that's what he was saying, but I wasn't prepared to call him out on that. Understand what he did there. From a rhetorical standpoint, this Pierre Corey guy, he's selling it as if he was the official source determining the cause of death in this case. Either because A, he was at the bedside and he, determined cause of death, or B, he was hired by like some officiating organization, either the government or the medical association or whatever, to determine what the cause of death was. That is not what he meant by he did like a whatever analysis he was referring to. What he means is that he simply had a difference of opinion with other experts who had already determined cause of death, and he disagrees. It disgusts and it pisses me off that he tries to spin it as if he was the person that determined like the official cause of death for that patient. No, he just had a difference of opinion.
Be motivated to
Decades
go
of
in a certain
experience
direction,
in doing
huh?
malpractice case reviews. I'm a pulmonologist and intensivist. I looked through immense amounts of records, collected a lot of detail, and I'll even tell you that one of them, about 60% through, I was actually thinking that measles might be the proximate cause. And then everything changed. Neither of those were from measles at all.
So how do
the
you-
third one is a man for whom no records are available. There's very little information. There's a claim that he died. But I will tell you that the media went nuts with 2 children dead. And the families went to children's health events, and then they tasked me with doing the review. And I found that both of those cases are slam dunk lawsuits.
Did you review
Lawsuits.
you review the 83 in Samoa from RFK?
Here's a good follow-up question. They're slam dunk lawsuits. Trust me, I know everything. I worked 30 years and I had a difference of opinion. Okay. They're slam dunk lawsuits. Do you have any lawsuits that you won over this? No, you don't? Oh, okay. So it's just your opinion on all this shit then. Okay.
Okay.
What does that have to do with anything? We're talking about measles here.
No, we're talking about measles around the world. It's
No,
not
you-
just
you
America.
are.
So
You are.
hang on.
Keep
I'm
talking.
talking about measles in
Here,
general.
let me
Let's
explain.
talk
Other
about
countries don't matter?
Hang
Let's
on.
talk about what we reviewed.
Let me
He
explain-
reviewed the medical records. Did you guys review the medical records in Texas?
So, Pierre, how do you determine if a measles death is a measles death?
So you would look for evidence. So if you're going to die of measles in the way these 2 children died, which was hypoxic respiratory failure, you would have to have evidence of measles in the lungs, okay, through testing. On one autopsy,
Did they test?
No, these were both severe, overwhelming bacterial pneumonias. They were both tested. Yes.
So do you think that secondary bacterial infections are not
they're as common as the
potential
day is
cause
long.
of
My
measles
daughter's
deaths?
had one after the flu. They're as common as days long.
Yeah,
These
so-
were gross mismanagements. That's what I'm telling you.
Yeah, they
These
were
are
given the
both
wrong-
slam dunk.
They were given the wrong
medical
drugs for the
malpractice.
Why were they
missed
slam
so
dunks?
many
What
things.
were-
So
Some of the
just
worst-
so
Ask for specifics. These guys, they make their grift relying on the audience not knowing enough to ask them these questions. So just ask for the specifics. Oh, these are slam dunks. Explain to me why. Explain to me what was wrong in these slam dunk cases that you're referring to. Be specific.
all the other doctors are just wrong who looked
What's
at the
that?
case?
What doctors?
The doctors who
came out
determined the
with
cause of
opinion?
death.
Yeah, who are those?
The doctors who saw the actual
How do you know it
girl
was a
and
doctor?
treated them.
Yeah, I know what they thought. I saw their records every day. They kept saying measles and pneumonia while she's dying from an overwhelming suppurative bacterial infection. That's why she died, is because they stopped antibiotics and steroids and they watched a child descend into zero oxygenation state. I got to tell you, that case gives me nightmares. And you guys want to sit there with a fucking smirk like you think you know?
It gives me nightmares. Emotional appeal, right? A bacterial infection. Is a bacterial infection one of the not side effects, but one of the symptoms of having measles? Measles can lead to bacterial pneumonia through secondary infection, which is a common and potentially fatal complication, especially in young children and those with weaker health. I mean, there you fucking go, right? But these are the things, again, he's relying on the audience not being able to know enough to call this out, or B, you don't have like the ability to look all of this up on the fly and know every little specific thing that he's talking about.
Everything. You want to bring up Samoa? And I got to watch these children
we're
die
talking about
while
fucking
the media
measles.
while the media and you guys go nuts at some measles.
We're here on an anti-RFK tour, and you think I'm not going to bring up the time when he went to Samoa, caused extreme vaccine hesitancy, and then 83 kids died of measles? You think I'm not going to bring that up?
Do with the measles epidemic that we're supposed
So
to
the-
talk about?
so
Because 83 kids died of
The
measles.
measles epidemic from misinformation.
The
I'm not
topic-
talking about
yes,
1983
and
They
Samoa.
died.
Samoa-
83 kids died because RFK lied about vaccines. You
Samoa-
think I'm not going to fucking talk about that?
Samoa is a
Jesus
previous case
Christ,
of
dude.
misinformation leading to a measles outbreak, just like similar to what we're
It's
seeing
the
in Gaines
exact
County,
topic
Texas.
we're talking about.
And so, Pierre,
No.
you're saying that all the other doctors are wrong and you're right. I'm sorry, but if practicing doctors who are actually treating the child.
Unfortunately, this isn't going to be very rhetorically effective because it doesn't look good the way that he, and this is admittedly a hard one to navigate. When someone asks you, like, do you know the names of the doctors who did call of death? Oh, no, I don't, right? The reason it looks bad is because you've called out the other person's expertise on this given case, and you don't know the details yourself. There is a way out of this, though. It's just to be completely straightforward and honest. And you have to go, yeah, no, I don't know the specific details of this specific case. But I am relying on the doctors who did make the determination. I rely on their expertise. Now, again, if you're saying that you disagree with their expertise, I want you to actually tell us why, rather than just like vaguely gesturing at it that, oh, from your opinion that it was wrong and the other experts were wrong and you're right. Okay, well, explain that to me. Don't just, vaguely gesture and say, oh, it's the worst case I've ever seen. It gives me nightmares. Like, explain what was wrong with the determination that they made.
I have a different
is not
opinion than
only
you.
one
I have a
doctor.
hard time just taking your word
Only
for it.
one doctor, which is the attending physician. She was proven wrong.
Based on
after
what?
that. No, when the
But
test come
proven
back
wrong from
showing-
you?
From a bacterial culture of the lungs showing a wickedly multi-drug resistant bacteria that she never treated or looked for.
So it was multi-drug resistant.
Yes.
So antibiotics probably would not be effective in that case.
There would have been a few she could have tried. And in that case, there were algorithms that would have led you to the correct antibiotic. She employed none.
There are cases
you
where
guys want to battle me on a case you know nothing
there
about?
are cases where secondary pneumonia infections are too far gone with multi-drug resistance, where it's really hard to do anything.
they-
But it would not have happened if the child was protected against measles in the first place.
So I'm
Yeah. I don't know if you really communicated that in the most clear way to the audience, but looking it up, it seems to be why they made the determination that they did, which is that bacterial pneumonia is a known complication of getting measles. And so now I didn't look at the details of the case, but there's always this conspiracy about, what the narrative they tell you is incorrect or wrong or they lied, and it's like you don't actually fucking know that without actually looking into it. 99% of the time, the doctors are arriving at the conclusions they do for a reason. It's not just, the whole world isn't a fucking conspiracy just because they say something you disagree with. If the doctors in this case said they died from pneumonia because pneumonia caused a secondary bacterial infection, which measles is known to do, then them calling the cause of death measles is not inaccurate. It's just not. Whether you like it or not, it's not inaccurate. And so far, this Pierre Corey guy bringing up, oh, they died from a bacterial infection of their lungs. That's not dispositive. And when I say dispositive, what I mean by that is a dispositive statement or claim or counterpoint is something that is supposed to neutralize, supposed to wipe out the opponent's argument, right? It's supposed to be a way to show that, hey, the cause of death could not have been pneumonia measles because it was this other thing. Well, actually, the thing that you're pointing out as the other thing that caused the death is a known complication of measles. It is something that arises when a person has measles. Because here's the thing about diseases. Diseases are oftentimes not the thing that's killing you. What is often killing you from the disease is what the disease causes your body to do. It may cause your body to break down. It may trigger your body to overproduce certain things, to underproduce certain things. The pneumonia, the bacterial infection, measles helps lead to that. And how does it lead to that? Let's read about that. Why does measles cause pneumonia? Directly through viral replication in lung cells and indirectly by causing immunosuppression. Okay, there you go. So, because measles is known to suppress your immune system, it makes it more likely that you're going to develop other, kinds of bacterial infections or viral or bacterial infections. So, if not for the measles, these patients may not have died because these patients may not have been immunosuppressed, meaning under normal operating conditions, their immune system is able to ward off bacteria and viruses that would cause, something like pneumonia. But because they had measles, that wasn't the case. So for the doctors to say the cause of death was measles, that could definitely be true. This guy citing that, it was a bacterial infection caused by pneumonia, that doesn't counter that point at all. That may actually be the mechanism through which the measles had caused the death. Hopefully that makes sense.
I'm actually going to stand down on this, and I'm going to defer to my the pulmonology expert here, who clearly reviewed the case and comes up with a different opinion. So I defer.
We're going to go with the opinion of licensed doctors. I think probably is probably a better way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go with doctors who didn't lose their job. So
Yeah.
But
That's a good question. That's what I'm going to look up. For Pierre Corey. Is he even licensed? Because, keep in mind, he's been touting his credentials this entire time. If he's someone who doesn't even have a license, and under normal circumstances, I don't necessarily harp on this, like, oh, you don't have your credentials. If you have the right substance to your arguments, I think that's what counts the most. But if you're going to lean on your credentials, okay. So it looks like somebody who lost his credentials. He graduated from NYU School of Public Service and with a master's in public administration. Graduating with a Doctor of Medicine degree and completing residency and fellowship training in critical care and pulmonary medicine. He later joined, okay. Okay. And so, yeah, it looks like he lost his credentials for this specific reason. Now, he's going to argue, oh, I lost my credentials because I said something that they didn't want me to say, because the conspiracy superpowers are conspiring against me and they don't want me to tell the truth. It could just be because he spreads misinformation. Remember, don't let these guys kind of like jerk you around the conversation. Remember, the first part of this debate was that these two could not cite any like legitimate evidence or mechanism that links vaccines to autism, and these two didn't know terminology that these two on the left side knew about the studies, knew about the mechanisms of chemistry that are going on, in the biological system there. So for him to repeatedly, misrepresent information, that is a big deal. And when it comes to this particular case with the cause of death in this vaccine case or whatever, or in this measles case, him going to the public and saying, oh, they couldn't have died of measles because they died of bacterial infection in their lungs, he should know better as a doctor. You know, if you have the kind of credentials that you do here, you should know that that argument is misleading to the public. And so you are intentionally misleading the public.
Having RFK travel to Samoa does not. How is that? Was Samoa having a measles problem before RFK came?
So the measles vaccination rates in Samoa were dropping because of misinformation that is the same misinformation that RFK Jr. pushed on his website. Because the whole impetus for the vaccination rates dropping was, I don't know if it was a mistake or malicious, but a nurse resuspended an MMR vaccine in muscle relaxant, and that killed a child. RFK took it upon himself to take advantage of that tragic death and spread misinformation about it and scared other people into not vaccinating.
So wasn't there a measles vaccination program in an adjacent island that happened around the same time?
Yeah, and that island was protected.
Oh, really? Or maybe that coincidence of vaccinating that other island caused the measles outbreak.
Are you saying that measles vaccines can spread measles?
A measles vaccine is actually live measles virus, you guys.
That was an interesting exchange because he brought up that island, and I was thinking to myself, like, he must be bringing up this island because he looked up the specific talking point, and he had this whole argument about how, oh, if you actually look at the stats of this neighboring island, they had an outbreak even though they had higher vaccination. But he immediately called his bluff on that by saying, oh, they did have vaccination, but they were protected. So then he shifts to, oh, well, their vaccination over here caused an outbreak on the mainland. And it makes me wonder, because that's what he fell back on. Was he actually intending to use that argument, or did he shift his argument halfway through because he realized Dan Wilson on the left here actually did know the stats, and so he wasn't going to get away with misrepresenting the stats on what happened on the island versus the mainland?
Coincidence, isn't it?
Not really. Because the island, what's a bigger coincidence is the vaccination rates on the island that had 83 kids fucking die dropped precipitously below the level of herd immunity.
Before RFK came.
While he was spreading misinformation about the impetus for the whole drop. And then he went
He was there for something else. He was on a beach vacation. It had nothing to do with
He went there
RFK.
and met with local anti-vaccine activists to promote their cause.
And suddenly, just like that, just like a light switch, measles comes out of nowhere.
Not nowhere.
Not a light
Comes out of
switch.
nowhere. How does it come out of... They're
When
on an
kids
island.
Look at the conspiracy brain here. The obvious answer is that there was vaccine hesitancy that was spread by people like RFK and this whole anti-vax movement. And once that happened, you saw an explosion in measles outbreak because the population dropped below the herd immunity threshold. And so this guy's mind immediately goes to, when he's confronted with this information, oh, well, isn't that convenient? And he spins another conspiracy. Rather than reevaluating his priors, rather than reevaluating what he thinks he knows, he needs to salvage what he believes to be the truth, what he believes is his conclusion, by just inventing a new conspiracy. Oh, well, there is a conspiracy. Somebody caused this measles outbreak in order to make us look bad. Maybe no one manufactured an outbreak to make you guys look bad. Maybe the exact thing that everybody said that you guys would cause actually happened because your anti-vax views are actually bad for public health. But he cannot accept that to be the case. So he has to invent a new conspiracy to bail himself out with.
Stop
They're
vaccinating.
isolated. Where's the measles coming
Hang on.
from?
So, do you think Samoa is isolated? Wait, do you think airplanes don't get to Samoa?
Where's it coming from?
From people who are carrying from
It's
unvaccinated
not an
people who are carrying
isolated
the
tribe.
virus.
It's a civilized place.
Unvaccinated people who carry the virus.
Jesus Christ. Don't have mercy with people like this, by the way. What a fucking stupid thing to even say or question or bring up like you made a compelling argument. Where did they get it from? How could they possibly get it? They exist in the vacuum of a pocket dimension. Bro, they got planes that fly in, they got tourists that come through. Like, what the fuck are you even saying? But he's relying on, oh, it sounds foreign, it sounds mythical, it sounds far away. My audience usually doesn't critically evaluate the things that I'm saying. Yeah, because people travel to that country, people travel out of that country and they come back. It's not even that complicated. I can't even believe I have to say this.
Do you know how reservoirs work? Viral reservoirs?
Yeah.
Okay, so you know that measles circulates in the population among unvaccinated people?
Yeah, like what do you mean, like out of thin air? Like measles exists. You understand that, right? So when people don't vaccinate and it appears, like you're claiming this is some kind of magic or something?
So why aren't all of these unvaccinated people in the United States? They're not all getting measles. Why?
A lot of them
You don't
do.
automatically get measles. You have to come into contact with it.
Why are we just seeing this now?
Well, there's herd immunity.
Why are we just saying it now? Again, do not have mercy on this. Just hammer this point home and just make him look like a fucking moron. Let him crash and burn on this stupid anthill that they've, built up. Why are we just saying this now? For the very reason we're having this conversation, because you anti-vaxxers have spread this fucking dog shit all over the fucking population, and we see in areas now that are starting to not get vaccinating, they're starting to have these outbreaks. There you go. What, did you think that was a trick question?
With measles, you know that, right?
Because vaccination rates are getting low enough that herd immunity is eroding.
Because of RFK?
In part,
He's
yes.
the number one
He's been working
spreader
for
of this
decades
propaganda.
to
Yeah.
spread misinformation about
It's
measles
not
vaccines.
just him, but he's the number one guy. I mean, you guys help a lot too. Like you're probably in the top 5. Like
Thank you.
Yeah,
you
you're up
can
there.
get to number one day, though. I mean, I have faith
Face
in you. You'll get there.
true. Just say it. Be
Can
honest.
you tell me how all-cause mortality has dropped after they introduced the measles vaccine? Can you cite a study that looked at all-cause mortality of kids, showing that it dropped after they introduced the measles vaccine? Because
Yeah.
I couldn't find one.
I sent you one. That was on the list of...
Based. It's crazy to me how flagrant, how blatant, how dog shit, how fucking stupid this entire display is. And it's frankly speaking because these two guys are so used to existing in an ecosystem that like coddles them. The Alex Joneses, the Tim Pools, these dog shit, loser fucking conservative conspiracy theorist pieces of shit. They just create an ecosystem where these kind of views don't get challenged. And so these motherfuckers are used to just saying shit like this without anybody to push back on them. And the smallest amount of pushback is all it took. The smallest amount.
Didn't read it, did you?
I have.
Yeah, so
Of course he didn't read it. He doesn't need to read it. His business, the business that he built for himself, does not rely on him having to counter these counterpoints to him. It relies on people who don't know any better. So of course he doesn't read it. He doesn't give a shit. It doesn't fucking matter. The truth doesn't fucking matter either. All it is just a narrative that he could spin to people that are willing to pay to listen to his dog shit.
So let me describe it to you.
should
So
have.
it was actually this is actually a really interesting story. So measles vaccines were not rolled out at the same time in each country all around the world. They were rolled out in separate years, sometimes in separate decades. And 3 countries in the study, I think it's Denmark, Sweden, and the US, they looked at the time of rollout for the measles vaccine, and they saw a precipitous drop in all-cause mortality that was actually greater than what they would expect with just measles mortality going away. So scientists thought, oh, that's really interesting, let's confirm that. The paper I sent you confirms that. It's a precipitous drop in all-cause mortality every single time, sometimes in a different decade, right after the measles vaccine was rolled out. And it was found that measles actually can infect your memory B and T cells. Do you know what the significance of that is?
I believe, let me see if I understand this right. And who am I? I'm just a college dropout who studied engineering. I didn't study biology, but I do know a little thing or two about chemistry due to the chemistry that I take for engineering. Memory B and C cells, I believe this has to do with your immune system. And I bet this is why pneumonia causes bacterial infection. Because, and this is why it causes immunosuppression, I was saying earlier, if it impacts your memory C and B cells, I believe this means that it affects the ability for your immune system to basically retain, I think it'd be RNA or something similar to that, basically the information that it has on viruses and bacteria that it's fought in the past. And if it doesn't have the ability to use that, it uses that information, by the way, to produce like new immune cells or something along the line, things that the immune system uses to fight off viruses. It produces like proteins and enzymes and shit. If it doesn't have those instructions already there, then it's immunosuppressed. Your immune system kind of relies on building up like a database of viruses and diseases to deploy the correct weapon against, to use an analogy.
No. Yeah?
Why don't you just keep talking?
Memory
We're
B
not
and
here
T.
to answer your questions.
If you know, you can just say yes and we can move on.
Just talk.
You need to tweak an asset with
Utter fucking defeat. That is such a sign that they're defeated. They know that they're fucking crushed in this debate, and so they're like, "What are you asking us for? Why are you making us look stupid? Just tell the audience. Just get it over with already." Okay, cool. I will.
without messing
Fuck you.
everything up. Luckily, there's Adobe Express. Create assets that fit
I will continue to educate you. Sure, memory B and T cells are cellular immunity. Your immune system depends
There you
on
go.
these cells in order to create antibodies
There you
and
go.
exert cellular
How-
immunity against pathogens.
How is
So
it, by the
measles can
way?
infect these cells.
Okay.
And when
How is it that these two guys on their side, lean so much on their expertise in this field, their credentials? I was a doctor for such and such long. Bro, you can't tell me what the memory B and C cells are? You don't fucking know that? Are you fucking crazy? Are you kidding me? That's crazy. I didn't study the shit that you studied. I didn't work for 30 years as a doctor either. And even I can surmise what that means. Even I have some like vague familiarity with the concepts there. You really don't know what that means? That is fucking crazy. That's super fucking insulting to our intelligence.
that measles infects those cells, they die. They're either cleared by the immune system or they die off from the measles infection. So that means that these kids who are getting measles, their immune systems their memory is essentially getting wiped in a sense. And it's a phenomenon called immune amnesia that is well characterized now. It's characterized mechanistically by what I just said. And that is an explanation as to why the all-cause mortality dropped further than what we would expect for just measles mortality in these countries that implemented the measles vaccine.
That's really interesting to know. Just to highlight what he said, not only do we have data that shows that the measles vaccination has worked, it saw a reduction in mortality. That's when they mean all-cause mortality, basically what they're saying, if I understand this correctly, is that if you look at the stats on all of the different ways that there's mortality within a given population, be that from a death from infection, a car accident, someone killing themselves, suicide, gun deaths, right? If you look at all the different causes of death, there should be an amount within that total number that would represent like, okay, this is the amount that came from deaths due to the measles. Well, not only did we see in the statistics that we had a reduction in the overall deaths that seems to correlate with the number of measles deaths that you would expect. So it worked for measles, but it also decreased death even beyond that, because what we found was measles will lead to other kinds of deaths down the line because it destroys your cells immune memory. And so even if your immune system defeats the measles, it's lost all this information on how to fight other diseases and viruses and whatnot. And so when you get infected again by something else, your immune system has a higher probability of losing that battle to that new infection. And to be clear, what this means is these two on the right got utterly fucking decimated on this point. If you actually understand, like if you're actually following logically what happened here.
Pierre and Steve have finish anything else they want to say for this topic, and then Dave and Dan, you get the last word on this topic.
So, if there was a slight change in the slope of decrease to something called precipitous, that would have been from like 1.5 to 0 per 100. And I'm making up those numbers, but I know the curves of mortality of measles had been plummeting for decades, largely due to other reasons. When many vaccines were introduced, the mortality rates were near 0 from very high and early in the century. So to see this myth that there's this magical impact on public health of vaccines in terms of mortality, it's just not there. I could see maybe cases in some certain diseases that there's some effect. But when you make a decision to give someone a vaccine, you have to ask yourself a few questions. First of all, what is the risk of getting that vaccine? What is the risk of getting that disease? Almost all of the things that we vaccinate for now have near 100% survival. And then you have to ask yourself, how commonly is someone exposed to that vaccine? And when you were talking about healthy children. This blanket program that these guys are propagandists for, the jab every arm for every disease in every child, and if anyone who says no because there's a specific circumstance in my child, they're an anti-vaxxer, it's ludicrous. It's not how you practice medicine. Medicine is nuanced and individualized. Every patient is different. Every product is different. They don't even know that even the different manufacturers have different products, different risk profiles. And then the bigger point that I want to make, and I'm just going to come back to this again and again, because they keep saying they're going to teach me something. I am seeing the biggest blind spot in two people I've shared a room with in 5 years.
He didn't say anything for this whole fucking rabble. This is just blah blah virtue. I can't believe these people will talk to me. I got 30 years experience and blah blah blah. And for them to question me and what I said and blah. Okay, cool. Was there any substance in anything that you said? Did you put a counter argument anywhere there?
Which is this complete, either willful or accidental, or actually the purposeful ignorance of the
ignorance of what? All that we've illustrated in this debate so far is that you guys have actually been ignorant of your own studies, of your own terminology that you try to use.
System in which it operates. Science has developed sophisticated methods to suppress.
Then name them, motherfuckers. Stop being vague, because you keep getting blown the fuck out on the specifics.
The risks of vaccines, and it's been going on for decades. So anyone who claims safety, that is a curated and propagandized objective. It's called disinformation. And by the way, all of you guys have been victims of disinformation. You know who invented disinformation? The tobacco industry.
I'm pretty sure who invented misinformation was some man or some woman a couple 100,000 years ago. I'm pretty sure humanity has used deception for all of its existence. The tobacco industry didn't invent it.
They developed 5 tactics to get you to believe that cigarettes didn't cause harm. Those tactics are still in play, and they are still sending out propaganda. You know what propaganda is? It's a message or a story to get you to think or act in a certain way. And I walk through society today, I see victims of propaganda around me. They parrot narratives and consensuses, the scientific consensus. They're all manufactured. And to hear these people, this guy, he just quoted a Danish study for autism. Let me ask you a question. 500, this sounds really good. What
This guy over here quoted a Danish something. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met a Danish person before? How do we even know Danish people are real? This guy's citing studies about Oompa Loompas, basically. I've never met a Danish person before. Danish people aren't real. You might as well just make arguments like that at this point.
He said, right? 500,000 kids. They looked at kids who had the MMR and who didn't. They looked at rates of autism. And they concluded that it was actually lower if you got MMR. Problem with that. In the raw data to the study, it showed a 45% increase in autism. But the conclusion of the study was there was a suggestion of a decrease. What happened between the raw data and the conclusion? Well, they controlled and adapted and modeled. How did they do that? Unknown. For a paper of such importance, which every international healthcare organization around the world used to uphold and shove down your face that there's no link between autism, they did not say how they reversed the study's conclusion. If you're going to peer review and publish that study, any peer reviewer would...
The annoying thing is that these guys have lied and exaggerated so much in this debate that he's probably misrepresenting that study too. But without diving into that specific study, it's hard to say whether or not what he's saying is 100% true or not. But my God, in my eyes, he doesn't have any credibility left over at this point. Neither him or the guy on the other side. So I don't take anything that he says at face value. I'd have to look into every single claim that he makes.
Would say, how did you get from here to there? Not in the study, not in appendix. So there's just one little example of what these guys don't know. This guy's literally putting, when I saw that paper in the thing, I laughed. I laughed out loud. I was like, okay, yeah, of course they're going to put that paper in, because that's what supports their thing. This guy's saying hundreds of papers and hundreds of thousands. There's 2 other papers they use for autism. DiStefano, you know what he did? He looked at number of antigens and tried to correlate with autism. Do you want to know why he didn't look at number of vaccines and what the difference is? During the period of his study, the DTP vaccine went from 3,000 antigens to 4 to 6. And that's when he was doing the study. It's a very bizarre choice. Do you think that's a little weird that someone would choose antigens? Then the third one, which is banana. That's another one the entire world holds up, like you guys. That one, remember, that's the one in Canada, where they saw autism rates rise while MMR vaccinations fell. And they said, see, it disproves the link. Fun fact. The autism rates were increasing in Montreal, and they used data from Quebec City. Could you possibly tell me why they wouldn't use autism rates in Montreal and vaccination rates in Montreal? Why would they use a different city? Just a question. I mean, is that like a kind of a study design that you guys would come up with?
All right, thank you, Pierre. Steve? Yeah, go ahead.
Again, I mean, I wonder if what he's saying is even true. It sounds so shitty, but like you have to even question sometimes whether even just like the on their face claims that they're making are even true, let alone taken out of context.
Steve, did you?
And again, are they doing this again? I just noticed it right now. Are they dumping all of this gish gallop at the end in their closing statements so these guys can't actually sit there and, you know, interrogate these points?
Have something quick to add on the measles topic?
I'll just say something quick.
They are,
Whenever
aren't they?
they report these measles cases in the press, they have 2 buckets: vaccinated or unvaccinated and unknown. Why do they always lump?
Who is they? Do they always do this? Is this actually true? Or are you just saying this? Like, it's so frustrating and annoying, but you really have to question this.
The unknown with the unvaccinated. The reason is it serves to scare the public because it looks like they just hear it as, oh, it's the unvaccinated that aren't getting hit. Well, actually, why would they need to lump it in with the unknowns? What they
I don't even believe that what he's saying is true. And you'd have to bring up some studies to like look at this and actually check. Is it true that in their data in these studies, they don't break out the unvaccinated versus the unknown? Is that actually true? Or did he run into one study that he found at some point that did that? And then he's spinning this entire narrative that they all do that.
should be reporting is here are the number of vaccinated kids who got cases, here are the number of unvaccinated kids who got cases, and here are the unknown cases. And they never do that ever.
They never do that ever. I bet that they do that the majority of the time. Not only do I think that it's not true that they never ever do that. I'm willing to bet that they actually do that in the majority of the papers that they publish. I bet you anything.
Ever in the press. I wonder if there's a reason for that. Do you think? Maybe?
Okay, let me just see what a specific claim is. Hold on.
I'll just say something quick.
Yep.
Whenever they report these measles cases in the press.
Okay, measles. Measles vaccinated status. Okay. Measles vaccine coverage versus vaccine cases. Share of children who have had 2 doses of the measles vaccine. Unvaccinated. So without even diving too deep into all the research that's on this, right away I find already, here's one graph. Unknown status is broken out separately from unvaccinated status. I bet you my ass, okay, I shouldn't say that, that I'm going to find this in a lot of the data. Unknown MMR, no MMR, it's broken out again. I can't read this, unfortunately. 1 dose, unknown, 2 doses, not, it's broken out again. Look at this, this is also broken out. again. So he says he's just a fucking liar. I cannot fucking stand people like this because the lies that they tell, they take time to like look up and Google, like they're in the weeds and they know they can get away with that. But it just completely baseless. Everything he says is just completely not true. It's the opposite of true. What a fucking piece of shit. Hold on.
They all have two buckets: vaccinated.
No, they don't.
or-
You fucking liar.
You ever think?
On the measles topic.
Look at.
I wonder if there's a reason for that.
I just want you to let this image burn into your face, into your mind. Don't let it burn into your face. Let it burn into your mind. This is the face of someone who is a giant piece of shit liar, knows that he's lying, and wants to manipulate the crowd, the population, in order to peddle these lies. Look at this dog, like this shit-eating fucking grin that he has. Fucking eye tweaked out to the fucking left over here because he's blind or whatever. What a fucking moron.
You think maybe?
All right. Thank you, Steve.
No, I don't think so. I think you're a fucking liar. Okay.
Dave and Dan, you guys got the last word on the measles topic.
Okay, real quick before I get started. I just heard Pierre say that it's hand-wavy or like secretive to control for factors or confounders in the data and not tell you what you did.
Yeah, by the way, I mean, that's good science. For a doctor to even say that, like, oh, you know, when they did the study, they checked to see if there were other things that were going on that might have explained it. You say that like it's a bad thing. That's what you should do. That's what you're doing if you're honest and you're responsible, rather than just trying to spin a narrative by ignoring any, you know, external factors that you weren't accounting for. And the doctor says it like it's a bad thing.
Methods of every paper tell you what they controlled for and what
Not that
statistical
one.
tests they do. They do.
Not that one, sir. Show me the paper where the methods are.
Yeah, we can do that.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
You guys mind if we take a 5-minute break? You can go on the internet and find it for me?
So
You can show me the methods? Let's do it.
In this paper right here.
Oh, goddamn, blown
It's
the
Madsden
fuck out.
2004.
Sorry?
Madsden, I think it's 2004. M-A-D-S-E-N.
I'm talking about.
Danish paper, 500,000 kids. Yeah, that was the author chief.
We're talking about the Danish one.
Yeah.
The Danish study, right?
Yeah.
Madsden.
So real quick. So do you think
That's
it's
the study, sir.
So do you think it's not important to control for confounders in a population?
Of course it is. I'd love to see how that was done, though.
Wait a fucking second. Do you see what he did there? I'd love to see how it was done. Hold on a second. Hold on. Okay. Maybe I'm jumping the gun here. Maybe he's going to say, I'd love to see how it was done, and I know for sure that this study, they didn't show that work. And I know that that's actually going to be true. I know that they're looking up the study right now, and they're actually going to confirm that this guy wasn't being dishonest. He was actually telling the truth. I can't wait to see that. Let's see what happens.
Because it's a pattern.
It is kind of a pattern, isn't it? That's why I say what I say.
Yeah, do they clearly... I've never read a paper
Dave can-
before. The statistical models that they used, did they explain them or provide them? No.
Yep. All right, so we're not going to argue in the audience.
Yeah. Let's try to keep going here.
So it is important to control for confounders. So why do you weigh the raw data more highly than the controlled analysis?
It's here's the thing. A pattern.
Okay. To be charitable here, the point he's making is that the study doesn't show you how they're controlling for those confounding factors. And I'm wondering, and it's kind of hard to do in the middle of a debate to like look through the whole study and figure out if they talk about it. So I'm wondering if they're able to actually look it up real fast and look to see if that's true or not. At this point, we don't really know. And just to be fair, it's possible that this is the case for just this study. Just this study. Just keep in mind, like, he could be right on this, but he'd only be right on this specific study for this specific point. And the point that he's making wouldn't really push the needle in one direction or the other. It would just be like, okay, well, we don't have that information. It'd be nice to have more information. Let's find more information on that. But it wouldn't mean, oh, he's correct and they're wrong. It would just mean that, hey, this study doesn't really break it down. We would love to see more information to see how they break it down.
Suppression and manipulation of trials around autism has
All
a
over the
scope
world?
and a scale you don't even have any idea how to
all over the
comprehend.
world?
That's just, how about the 3 that I just gave you that are used all around the world? Madsden goes from 45% increase to 8% lower. You got a guy who chooses to study antigens when a vaccine goes from 3,000 antigens to 4, and he says there's no correlation with autism. And then you have a guy who uses data from
3 antigens to 4. What does that even fucking mean? An antigen is any foreign unusual substance like parts of a virus, bacterium that triggers an immune response. Okay. So he thinks the immune response is causing autism, or he thinks antigens are causing autism. Okay.
From another city, there's no reasons for any of those three things. My problem with Madsden is that the statistical modeling comparisons that she carried out in a paper of that import that's held around the world, you would think should be transparent. By the way, science should be transparent, and when it's not, you should be asking questions, not just shoving it down your throat and screaming it into social media.
Dave and Dan, final words on the measles topic.
Yeah, I mean, the methods are transparent. You can go and look at what was controlled for. And these are studies from all over the world. I was a scientist working in academia at one point, and scientists, by and large, want to basically compete with each other to be the best nerd on the block. They want to prove the other colleagues wrong so that they can show that their results are the most important. That's what scientists ultimately want.
Notice too, by the way, that their closing statement, like this one's going to be a lot shorter. It's going to include the other side interrupting. So they don't really get to like do this whole long diatribe like the other side
and they want
already
to be
did.
rigorous and objective with their data. And if their colleague is wrong, they will call it out. That is what the scientific community is. It is not this weird, shadowy organization where the CDC says something and we all say, yes, yes, of course.
Dave,
no.
have you ever researched anything that was inconvenient to pharmaceutical industry interests?
Let's let Dave and Dan
I'll
finish.
tell you what, I hadn't either my entire career. None of my
Interrupted him again. Look at that.
research ever threatened pharma until my research on ivermectin, and my life blew up.
Sure, but
So-
then, I mean,
so you don't understand science.
I do, and we can get to the ivermectin topic later, but
We'll
get there. But the point is, the scientific community is very competitive and objective in their approach. They will do the best
Not
they
when
can
they work
to
for
study.
pharma.
Let's let them have the last
So
word there, Pierre.
pharma is also checked by the rest of the scientific community. The scientific community is able to do their own research and say whether or not pharma is correct or not. That's why pharma is not allowed to just put anything on the market. It's a very rigorous and extensive process. And even after they get to the market, data published by independent researchers can get a drug pulled off the market.
Thanks, Dan.
This-
Dave, go ahead. Yeah.
This narrative here that they're spinning, he relies on this emotional hook of pharma controls every paper in every journal and every scientist at every university and
Never said
any
that.
institution and
That's
any
what you're
company.
saying about every paper.
Never
Because
said that.
this is the only way to
The funny thing is they did say that. And I mean, not to be pedantic, like, okay, you didn't literally say that, but actually they did literally say that. They kept saying, none of them do this. It's never ever cited in any blah, blah, blah. They did say that. But not only is it not literally every single one, but it's not even the majority. They never established that even the majority or that a lot of them do this. And even the one or two studies that they brought up, it doesn't seem like they were slam dunks for their case. It doesn't seem like the studies that they brought up really said all the things that they said the studies were saying, like they were misrepresenting them.
sell this story, right? There's no way that the entire scientific community, the global scientific community working in all of these sectors can cover something up. It's not going to happen. But that's why it is narrative driven. That's why it has to go this way. And we're going to talk, and MMR has a decades long track record of being proven to be incredibly effective, incredibly safe, and people stop taking it because of lies.
So, I mean, they made these points before. These points used to be good points, let's say like 10 years ago. And the problem isn't that they're not logically like good points. It's that the public has heard them over and over again, and you need something a little bit newer and novel to drive your point home. So it's not enough to say, oh, you know, the scientific method, the way it works, like it's really hard to game the system because there's so many different people from all over the world and different organizations, no association with each other. It's basically kind of like a grassroots open source kind of process. People have heard that argument before. You either have to rephrase that argument in a new way, at a new angle, to get people to really appreciate how that looks or what that means. Or you need to work on the Reddit, because overall, I understand logically the points that these two are making on the left side here, but I don't necessarily think that they've been as rhetorically effective as they could be. Overall, I think they still won this debate, because there are ways optically that the other side has mastered to, you know, leverage the narrativizing, leverage the emotional language, leverage like the appeals to authority to distract away from what's going on logically. And so I think that these guys, I think they did overall a good job, really good job with the studying aspect and knowing the information offhand. But there's a reason why They're not as rhetorically effective as they could be, and that's because they are letting themselves be yanked around the conversation by the conspiracy theorist. The conspiracy theorist can always just bring up another niche talking point that they memorized, another niche study that they found that they have some issue with, and they could just do this nonstop because that's all they do for a living. And you're going to sit there and you're just going to spend the entire debate just adjudicating whether or not their little nitpicks and their little talking points are true or not. And what you haven't spent that time doing instead is illustrating to the audience over and over again, occupying the audience's focus, occupying their mind, occupying the thing that they take away from the overall debate, because they're not going to remember every single little detail. The entire vibe of the conversation, the filter that washes over the entire debate and what people remember in their mind is all of the anti-vax talking points, because that's all you guys allowed the conversation to get focused on. What you should have done is do a little bit of both, okay? But make sure that you always make the time to dominate on, look at all these studies that we have. Look at all this evidence that we have. Look at all the proof that we have. Let me actually spend the time to explain this idea of how the scientific process is open source. Don't let me just use it as a cheap talking point that I throw away at the end that people don't really think about, that people have heard before, that has no impact. Let me actually spend the time and illustrate that picture to you guys. Let me spin my own narrative. And I know that has a negative connotation, but narratives can be used for a positive end. Let me spin my own narrative in your mind. Let me give you like an image in your mind of what the scientific process looks like, what makes it so great, what makes it so amazing. Let me allow that image to occupy your mind, occupy what you think about for the next hour, 3 days, the next week, because you've never really spent the time and sat there and thought about what that expression means, what it looks like. Let me cite 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, all these studies that these guys on the right side didn't read. Because chances are they're cherry picking the ones that they read for their particular arguments, and you get bogged down in discussing those. Bring up your own. There's a reason why the majority of the research favors your position in the argument. Just bury them under an avalanche of all the information, narratives, and the talking points and the ideas and the pros that you have on your side. You have a plethora of it to use. You have a giant arsenal that you built up over time. Don't be afraid to use it. We don't have to be afraid to use it. We don't have to be afraid to take the affirmative position in the debates anymore. We don't have to do that. Our ideas are better. We have more evidence on our side. Bring it up. Make that point. Sell it to the audience. Don't be ashamed. Don't be afraid of it. Say it with your chest. Say it bold. Say it proud. Because the reality is we've gotten to a point where it's no longer stale anymore. There was a time period where these guys got away with a lot because those narratives are stale. It's actually kind of refreshing to bring that whole conversation back again. People aren't used to hearing it anymore. Bring it back.
They stop taking because of lies, and then kids get measles and die. 83 dead in Samoa, RFK's fault, blood on his hands, no remorse. And it's gonna start happening in Florida immediately.
All right.
And it's the fault of people like this. That's what it is.
We are going to move on to the next topic. We got to get rolling here on these topics. Just to recap, that was leading 12 minutes and 30 seconds for Pierre, 10 minutes and 4 seconds for Debunk the Funk, 3 minutes and 31 seconds for Professor Dave, and 2 minutes and 58 seconds for Steve. Topic 3, and Dave and Dan, you're going to be starting this one. Did the COVID vaccine save lives? And also a sub-question to this topic, RFK Jr. pulls $500 million in funding for vaccine development. Is this good for the USA? Go ahead.
So I'll just start off my introduction to this topic with the sub-question to that topic, which is RFK's pulling of $500 million worth of mRNA vaccine.
I think that this argument is an easy argument to make, quite frankly speaking. I might even just skip it, and it's not because I'm trying to hide anything from you guys. I just don't, these debates take a lot of time to go through. It gets tiring after a while. To my knowledge, okay, and if you disagree with me, point it out in the comments, okay? It should be easy for you to disprove this point. My knowledge, and this is the reason why I want to skip this, is all of the evidence that we have when we look at mortality rates across the world, comparing different regions, different countries, different populations. I think the evidence is over-fucking-whelming. And most people just don't even look at it. But the evidence is out there. It's easy to find, and it's just overwhelming. This isn't even a complicated argument. This isn't like super, interesting, compelling, and I need to break it down into excruciating. It's really actually simple. All of the available data that we have on mortality rates with COVID versus vaccination, all of them point to vaccination reduces the mortality rate, it reduces the transmission rate, it reduces the amount of cases. Close chapter, end of story, easy, So if anything, let's maybe watch their opening statements, and then we'll fast forward to like their closing statements. See if there's anything novel that comes out of this conversation, because I don't think there will be.
From the U.S. I want to point out that among those projects that have lost funding are projects for an mRNA vaccine for HIV. And I just want to point out that RFK probably does not care about a potentially promising vaccine coming out for HIV because he doesn't think that HIV causes AIDS. And I think that is very, very troubling to
head of the
individual.
HHS, everyone.
Yeah, he has written chapters in his book about how HIV does not cause AIDS, was not responsible for the AIDS epidemic, and so he just is going to hamstring.
The RFK thing here is almost a distraction. They're going to spend a lot of time on RFK specifically, and I feel like they're losing real estate that should be used on the more general point about whether or not the vaccines were effective.
Efforts to help people who are the most disadvantaged when it comes to facing HIV/AIDS, which are people in the world who are still suffering most from it. So I think that is incredibly disgusting and monstrous of him to do, and it shows a complete lack of understanding of not only scientific data, but understanding of who is suffering in the world and who needs the help most.
Thanks, Dan. Dave, did you have some opening thoughts there on this topic?
Well, we're going to get into the data of the COVID vaccines as well, but they will try to use things like VAERS database and inflations of unreliable data on VAERS database, personal surveys, all of their sources for trying to pretend that the COVID vaccines killed all these insane amounts of people. 100% fabricated. Plenty of studies showing that they objective.
This is a good tactic. This is a good way to open up. Now, again, keep in mind that if you're using this tactic, you are focusing on their talking points. Again. Now you're focusing on debunking them, and you should do that. You should always make time to do that. But you also need to. We need to get this in our mind, okay? We need to repeat as many times as it takes for people to start realizing this. You also need to spend a lot of time making the affirmative case. Don't just stay on the defensive. Don't just stay on the countering their points. You need to make an affirmative case.
We save millions of lives.
But what I was going to say is, if you will out this tactic, right from the beginning, say, hey, my opponent's going to do X, Y, and Z dishonest thing. What you need to do as the conversation moves along, every time that they bring up one of those strategies that you talked about where they're being dishonest, point it out to the audience. Oh, look, he's doing exactly what I said earlier. Remember I said he was going to bring this up. Remember, he's proven my point. I said that he was going to do this. There he goes again, doing what did I tell you guys, right? Just bring it up, interject little snippets, just remind the audience. And then maybe at the end or in the middle, you want to circle back and remind people, like, I said that they were going to bring up X, Y, Z and, G thing. And that's exactly what we saw him do right now. And furthermore, I'm going to go even further, and I'm going to make sure that it's clear why him bringing up X, Y, and Z thing is misleading, or it doesn't really matter, or, it's a dishonest tactic that he's using.
Once the vaccines had been rolled out, it's extremely clear that the deaths were, after that point, 90% were unvaccinated. So there's just, as with all of these topics, there's going to be a reliance on disinformation, lies, distortion of data, unreliable data to try to pretend that COVID vaccines, like all the other vaccines that they're railing against, have done things that they simply have not done.
All right, Steve and Pierre.
So I'll agree with a couple of things you said. So I agree that there are many papers that say that. Granted. Going back to your comment about how it can't all be a conspiracy. Now, let's be clear. I didn't say that all of science. I would say there's areas of science that when they...
Oh, yeah. So he's going back to previous point. I didn't say all. I didn't say literally all. Okay, yeah, you didn't say literally all. You just said kind of like the big main consensus opinions that you have an issue with because you're trying to push like your alternative hypothesis on all this other bullshit.
Isn't that threatening to the economic model?
You alluded that all of the journals are compromised.
Finish my sentence, okay? You said a conspiracy. Here's where you do not know what you're talking about. It doesn't require a conspiracy. It's nothing but incentives. Stay in line, and that's how it happens. It goes to the societies, the researchers,
But the part of the problem here is that the incentives can go the other way. Like there's an incentive structure for peddling the kind of stuff that he's peddling, which is like the anti-vaccine stuff. Is that it's part of a political project. And it's part of, like this whole Republican political project. It's one of their biggest talking points. So, I mean, that's an argument that can go either way.
The journals, all they have to do is behave according to incentives. And
not one
falls
whistleblower.
Okay?
Nowhere in the world, not
now,
one whistleblower.
In terms of this idea that they save millions of lives, You'd have to really ponder for a second why life expectancy in the US dropped by 3 whole years, starting in late 2020 to 2024. 3 years. And if you guys can do math, I know you're like master
Why did it drop between that time period? Let's double check the time period he's talking
scientists and biologists, whole years. You have to really ponder for a second why life expectancy in the US dropped by 3 whole years, starting in late 2020 to 2024. 3 years.
Okay, it dropped by 3 years. Here's a question to ask you guys. Was the life expectancy of US citizens dropping before that? Because I have a feeling they were. Life expectancy, US, over time. So, yeah, look at this. We see that in the US, the life expectancy actually plateaued around 2015, and that it's been slightly decreasing since then. You do have a large drop-off. This drop-off looks like it occurs before 2020. But then you see after the pandemic, so right around 2021, it jumps right back up. You're shorter than comparable countries. Okay. 2020, we see a big drop-off. So it seems like the effects of COVID causes drop-off. And I mean that in a variety of ways, not only like the mortality rate because of COVID, but you know, the effects that it might have had on the economy or people's, you know, psychology, or you know, the crime, things of that nature. And it drops for 4 years. But again, the thing to keep in mind is that we see that it jumps right back up after COVID. So if we're to believe that, oh, the vaccines cause like this decrease in life expectancy, why do you see the life expectancy rate immediately come right back up after like the pandemic's over? 2008, I want something that covers the past few years more recently. So here, if we look at this, so yeah, we see a decrease around COVID time, which by the way, you see comparable countries. It looks like you see a decrease in every country right around that time period, but it comes right back up. So yeah, this is just an example of, again, just cherry picking information, cherry picking statistics.
Years. And if you guys can do math, I know you're like master scientists and biologists, but
the other thing to point out too is that he's implying that that's related to vaccination for some reason, the COVID vaccine for some reason. Just because you see that there's an increase in death around that time period doesn't mean it has anything to do with the COVID vaccine. An interesting question is to ask, okay, do we have any information that can give us a clue on what did cause that decrease in life expectancy? Because it could be any number of things. But you're not giving us that information. You're just heavily implying that you know that it's due to the vaccine without having to provide any evidence that that's the case.
But if you remember math, for life expectancy to drop, who has to die? The youngest and healthiest, the least risk towards COVID.
I don't believe that's how math works, but okay. He says, oh, in order for the life expectancy to drop, then the youngest have to die. That's not true. They have a higher weighting in the average, but that's not true, right? If older people are dying at the upper end of the spectrum, you're still going to see a decrease in the life expectancy, right?
And what were they dying of? Nobody knows. Suddenly, young people were dying like mad. And you know where the data comes from? Doesn't come from your journals. Comes from the life insurance industry, which I've written a lot about. I've sat on calls with executives from all the life insurance companies, all behind cameras, by the way. None of them wanted to show their face, but they.
Oh, I see. You've been on calls. You talked to all the insurance companies. Oh, but you don't have any evidence of it though. They didn't want to be on camera. They didn't want to show their face. So I'm making this claim that I've talked to all the insurance agencies, but there's no way to prove that that's actually true or not. I could have just totally made that story up, but there's no evidence of it because, of course, nobody wanted to record it. So I totally did it, and I'm totally not lying.
They saw a massive emergency in 2021. They reported, especially among young people, a 40% rise in year-to-year mortality in 2021. In the youngest and healthiest of society, this was group life health insurance, which is generally Fortune 500, white collar. They were dying at rates that outpaced.
Because here's another question, right? What else is going on around that same time period that you have COVID vaccines, start to take off? Is there anything else that is going on at that time that may cause people to die? maybe not the vaccine, maybe the actual virus itself. You know what I mean? Is that possible? Is it possible that people are dying, on the opposite end because they're not vaccinated or because they got the virus that the vaccine exists for that's currently glowing through society and like plaguing a bunch of people?
Any other sector, from 25 to 44. And you know when it spiked? The third quarter of 2021. We saw young people dying in droves. You cannot dismiss that data. I don't care how many studies you show me. And I've compiled many studies. You probably haven't heard of because they don't hit the big journals, but of huge increases in cardiac arrest calls to young people who just got vaccinated. I got a FOIA.
I've heard of studies that you never heard of. Oh, cool, cite them. Let's look at those studies, because I have a feeling that you're making shit up. I have a feeling you don't actually have studies, or the studies aren't peer-reviewed, or their methodology is shitty, and that's why nobody heard about them, because they haven't been open to public scrutiny before.
A request from New York State in February of 2021. You know what they were doing? Is vaccine clinics were calling the EMS to tell them they were vaccinating that day, and they wanted them on standby. So I have written this FOIA request from New York State, and have you ever heard of a medical clinic calling an ambulance before they start work and saying, we want you on standby? And there's 4 instances of that throughout Westchester County. So just tell me why everybody started dying in 2021. Young people.
I mean, these alone they're potentially good questions. But notice that a lot of times with these conspiracy theorists, they just have questions. And their questions have implications, things that they want you to make your own connections on. The connection is obvious. He's trying to say like, oh, they had these ambulances on standby because they knew the vaccines were going to hurt people. Okay, well, let's explore that question. Let's actually explore. Let's not just ask it to make an implication. Let's actually explore that question. Okay, if they called the ambulances there because they thought there was going to be increased mortality or danger rate with giving these vaccines, did we see some kind of increase in that particular area of any injuries associated with vaccines at the time? Do we know that? Is there another stated reason that they gave for why they called these ambulances around the area? Do we know that? These are interesting questions. We can actually look into them and actually get some information. But notice that he's not actually giving you information about why or what the stated reasons were. He's just asking vague questions that lead you to implications.
Who've never died at those rates before. A 10% year-to-year rise is a 1 in 200-year event. Outside of wartime or a massive terrorist attack, it's never been described in the history.
Yeah, we had a 1 in 1,000-year event. You know what it was called? It was called the COVID-19 pandemic.
History of the life insurance industry. Theirs rose 40%. Something truly unique happened in the third quarter of 2021, and no one knows.
Also, didn't the suicidality rate of young people increase during that time period? Suicidality rate of young people. Graph. So, okay, so you uptick in 2015. Let's go beyond that. 2021. Okay, so you see a slight uptick. Not huge, but okay, you see an uptick a little bit. Yeah, 21, 22, you have a little bit of an uptick here. So, I mean, does it have anything to do with it? What else increased over that time? Actually, hold on a second. I'm taking for granted that what he's telling us is even true. Young people, death rate, graph. Okay, we do see an increase in 2021 specifically. Massacre, death rate, okay. For 100,000. Again, keep in mind, COVID's going on during this time period. So COVID's killing people. But like the question is what else is going on? Because it's not just vaccination. There's a disease going through the country killing people.
Okay, so if you want to show that the COVID vaccine saved lives, what you do is you look at the record level data. We have one record level data set that's publicly available that epidemiologists can look at to prove that the COVID vaccine saved massive numbers of lives. Do you know how many papers that have been published by epidemiologists who look at the only record level data set where you could prove that the COVID vaccine saved lives? You know how many papers were published? 0. So, look.
Why don't you publish a paper then? Why don't you look at that data? Why don't you have anything to say about that data? Right? Number one, the data is kind of new, so that's probably why you don't have too many papers. I shouldn't even take for granted that he's even telling the truth here. Maybe there are papers published already that he's just not being honest about. But if he's so sure that the evidence points in the opposite direction, then why hasn't his group done a paper on what the data says to see if it actually confirms, the narrative that he's spinning?
If the COVID vaccine...
Because it's all just jacking off. It's just asking questions. It's asking questions that lead to, implied conclusions that they're not taking ownership
save
of.
lives. And we have the record level data set that would show whether or not that was true. Don't you think that every epidemiologist on the planet would be rushing to that data to show, see, we were right? Why are they all avoiding this publicly available record level data set that would tell us the truth? Now, Japan, they are the highest vaccinated population on the planet. These guys have like 6 or 7 vaccines because in Japan, you're very likely to follow the instructions of your health officials, so they're very obedient. They get all these shots. This led to 600,000 excess deaths in Japan over a 3-year period, the highest in their history. It's unprecedented. Do you know when the excess deaths started? It started when they rolled out the vaccines. Excess deaths were a flat line.
Okay. Excess deaths in Japan. What year is this?
In Japan, it's all these shots. This led to 600,000 excess deaths in Japan over a 3-year period, the highest in their history. It's unprecedented. Do you know?
Cause. Okay, so you had excess deaths again related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, what was going on at the same time that they were vaccinating people? There was also the actual fucking disease that was going through the population. All right, that aging population. Okay, an increase in deaths from cardiovascular disease is another factor contributing to the overall rise in mortality. While Japan has one of the highest rates of mRNA vaccine, research is ongoing into the possible contribution repeated to excesses, though more data and studies are needed to establish a conclusive link. What is this linking to? Okay. Immunosuppression and chronic infections following repeated, though these causes require further investigation. So these 2 bullet points are referencing the same one exact study. The study was done in what year? 2025, April? None. Okay. So there's only one study that's even kind of saying what he's saying. But it's not giving you any conclusions, not saying, hey, we looked into this, we found that the vaccines caused these excess deaths. All this is saying is that you had an increase in excess deaths around the same time that you had the vaccine. But again, really important point to make, and this is the whole correlation causation thing. We don't know if it's because of the vaccines or all like a dozen other things that are going on at the same time. And that's a good question to ask. Maybe it is. Maybe it is because of the vaccine. But before you make that conclusion, you probably should look at all the other things going on at the same time and making sure, hey, there isn't something else that's going on during the same time period that causes excess death.
You know when the excess deaths started? It started when they rolled out the vaccines. Excess deaths were a flat line in Japan. They rolled out the vaccines, and the excess...
Okay, hold on a second. Excess death rate, Japan, graph. Was it a flat line, or is he making shit up? Is he exaggerating? What the fuck is he talking about? Okay, I guess that's from the earthquake? Okay, yeah, if this is excess mortality, relative risk. This is a different graph, I think. Overall natural population increase, decrease. Death rate, death times 10. Japan experienced 219,516 excess deaths to 301,590 during the study period, corresponding to a 3.7% excess mortality. Excess mortality was negative in 2020, becoming positive in 2021, and peaking in 2022 before declining in 2023. By 2022, all prefectures exhibited positive excess mortality. The relative risk peaked in 2022. Coinciding with the post-emergency period. Comparing this post-emergency period with the prior year shows the highest % excess. Okay. This doesn't tell me what I'm looking for, though. Okay. What I want to know is if the excess mortality rate was even stable, like he's saying in Japan. (2020). Okay, this time window for this one's too small. Going back to 2017. Oh, this is over that time horizon. How can I see? I want to see by year. So in this year we have sort of total. Okay, let's just look at Tokyo. 4,500. Oh, Japan right here. Number of deaths over the upper bound, over the expected number. Okay, so it's between 6,000 to 40,000, 41,000. A little bit of a decrease, 3,000. That's quite a decrease, actually. Also a decrease between 2020. Okay, so this isn't flatline. This is significant decreases. Japan was decreasing prior to, like, so he's just not even he's just making stories up. He's just spinning narratives. Excess deaths in Japan over time. Daily deaths post-emergency period, relative risk, observed expected, indicates observed count above the upper bound. Accrued death rates. Reason I'm not satisfied with a lot of these graphs because they're just telling me deaths, but I need excess deaths. So okay, look at Japan. 20. Okay, but this starts at 2020. I need something before that. Excess deaths, observed rate. Is this Japan? Pandemic trend. Okay. 2019. I mean, it's bouncing around. It's not an exact flat line, but it is slightly decreasing trend, and it's kind of bouncing around. You see an increase during COVID. Okay.
Deaths skyrocketed. Anybody can go to our world in data, look at excess mortality, look up Japan, and see that. Now, it's supposed to be the other way around. When they roll out the vaccines, the deaths are supposed to go down.
Not really. Yes, but not really. Because, again, there are other things going on during that pandemic. So, the vaccine, conceptually, it's important to understand this, the vaccine is supposed to reduce excess deaths. Yes. But the pandemic itself is also increasing excess deaths. So those two factors are working against each other in real time. The question is going to be, is the reduction in excess deaths due to the vaccine, is it outpacing the increase in deaths due to the pandemic, or vice versa? So he's oversimplifying it by saying, oh, you know, if you looked at the data, you should see a decrease in excess deaths because they roll out the vaccine. Yes, in a vacuum, but we don't exist in a vacuum. There's something going on at the same time, which is that we have a pandemic rolling through the country, and that pandemic is increasing excess deaths. And it's possible that the increase in excess deaths during that time period, that bump that you see in the graph, cannot simply be mitigated by the decrease in deaths caused by the vaccines. The vaccines could have potentially, so let me draw this out to kind of make this point a little bit more clear. Paint app. Whatever, bro. Okay, so let me give you an idea. So you have like excess mortality, it's something like this, right? It's kind of straddling like a fairly consistent rate, and then you reach 2020 and you see an uptick due to the pandemic. Okay, now we introduce the vaccine. So the vaccine causes it now to start to do this, and we get back to an equilibrium. Now, what he sees is, hey, we had excess mortality during this time period here. Why didn't the vaccine cause it to not have excess deaths? Well, it's possible that if we didn't introduce the vaccine, instead of this chart looking like this and then kind of plateauing going back down, maybe instead without the vaccine, we have all this excess mortality due to the pandemic and would have increased even more without us having a vaccine. But the vaccine helped us kind of start to slow down that increase and start to get back to a normalized position. That's why what he's saying is kind of misleading.
But what happened in Japan is the deaths went up like a straight line. There's a famous Arbel study.
They went up like a straight line, but they went back down again. Japanese excess mortality. I gotta stop taking for granted if these guys are even being honest, by the way. Mortality after the vaccine. I would imagine that you'd see lagging indication. Study does not report expulsions and death among. Okay. A new study concludes excess deaths increased in Japan during the COVID-19 pandemic, but does not report any explosion in mortality among those vaccinated against the disease. But does not report any explosion in mortality among. Oh, interesting. So this is saying here that that study that guy's citing where you have excess mortality, that study is not, and this is an important point to bring up, that study is not saying that they saw an explosion in mortality rate among the vaccinated. But that's important to know because if we don't see an increase in mortality among the vaccinated population, then that's an exact contradiction to the point that he's trying to make. The study found that Japan's excess death rate dipped in 2020, then began climbing as in other countries and started tapering off in 2023. The researchers also indicate local factors, including how rural an area is or recent flu trends, that might account for variations in excess death rates at the provincial level. Social media posts on April 13th shared a headline from Slay News, a website that Reuters has fact-checked on multiple occasions, about the study that said Japan had issued a global alert about an explosion of excess deaths among vaccinated people. This is an absolutely false and misleading claim. A doctoral student from the University of Tokyo and lead author of the study, our research in no way suggested that excess deaths are exploding amongst the COVID vaccinated population. We did not investigate any association with vaccines or vaccinated population. So basically saying that their data, again, to the point that I'm making, didn't look into the specific reasons why you had an increased mortality rate. And so you would, it's a good question to ask, like, hey, is this due to the vaccines because it's around the same time period? Okay, but there's a lot of other things going around the same time period too, so we want to look into it and see whether or not, looking at different demographics, if we look at because think about that for a minute. What if you did do that research? You looked at it, you said, oh, that's interesting, you had an increase in mortality rate around the same time that you had the vaccine. That's super interesting. That could potentially mean that vaccines are causing this increased death rate. That's concerning. Oh my God, let's look into that. So then you decide, okay, cool, let's actually do that then. Let's actually look into that. Let's do a study now, and we're going to look at excess mortality rate, but we're going to break it down into which of those mortality rate is for the vaccinated population versus the unvaccinated population. And if you were to look at that breakdown, what if it's the case that when you look at that breakdown, you see that among the unvaccinated population, the excess mortality rate is higher than it was for the vaccinated population? That would immediately dispute the entire narrative that this guy's trying to spin. But that's the important thing, is that that's the issue with correlation versus causation, is because you have factors like that where until you actually dig a little bit deeper, you don't actually know if that correlation is due to the thing that you're trying to tie it to. You don't know if it's due to the vaccine or not. And it's possible if that we look into it, it takes like the most simple research to find, actually, when you look to the vaccinated population, they had less excess mortality. The increased mortality rate was due to the the population as a whole, and the population as a whole has a lot of people who are unvaccinated who are getting COVID and dying from it. That's possible. With numerous events occurring in Japan during the pandemic, it is difficult to draw associations on their impact on excess mortality and is likely highly multifactorial. Urban and rural preferences may exhibit different patterns as identified, and the interaction with other infectious diseases such as influenza likely plays a role. Okay, so I mean, it's really the information from that study doesn't really tell us one way or the other. It doesn't. The study didn't look into that question. It didn't go into that level of detail. But because it doesn't answer that question, because we don't have enough information, this guy as a propagandist is working off of, he's leveraging that we just don't know. He's leveraging, hey, there's a lot of deaths around this same time period. How do you know that it wasn't the vaccine? Oh, gotcha there. Checkmate, atheists, right?
Study that was done in Israel in the HMO system. They looked at boosted versus non-boosted. They said, look, if you're boosted, you get a 90% drop in death rate. And some people in the U.S. at Stanford and UCSF looked at that and they said, wait a minute. Non-COVID, these people who are unvaccinated died at 10 times more than the people who are vaccinated during non-COVID. In other words, the people who opted for the vaccine were less likely to die. So what they found was that this 90% protection offered by the vaccine was a complete mirage. It has to do with the healthy vaccinee effect, and it's because the people who refused the vaccine died at 10 times the rate of people who accepted the vaccine during non-COVID, which is essentially the control group. So
I see what he's saying. This is a valid point to bring up, but it doesn't invalidate anything. It doesn't really tell you one way or the other. Basically, he's saying that, and again, these guys were arguing against controls in their last argument. They were arguing against, oh, why do you need to break down into all these different other explanations that could possibly be the reason why you had this excess deaths? But now they like controls. Now they like being able to look at something and go, hey, let's look at other reasons why these stats might be the way that they're reported. And the point that he's making is legitimate, but this is something that scientists do and are aware of and think about, which is, hey, among the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated population, even outside of pandemic times, the vaccinated population already tends to have a lower mortality rate already. So, it doesn't tell us necessarily one way or the other with this specific vaccine, whether there's something unique about the vaccine. And again, that can go one way that could go either way. Because you want to have those controls in there. But there's a deeper question to ask about this as well, which is, hey, why is it the case that just in general, vaccinated people have a lower mortality rate than unvaccinated people? Is it because people who get vaccinated in general, even outside of just the COVID-19 vaccine, just vaccines in general, is it possible that them getting vaccinated makes them less susceptible to diseases? And COVID-19 is just another example of that. Is that possible? Yeah, that's possible. Is it possible that people who get vaccines tend to be from a higher socioeconomic status, and that higher socioeconomic status is correlated with healthier outcomes? And so it's not specifically the vaccine itself, it's just that population tends to have healthier lives in general. That's also possible. Those are interesting questions. Again, you don't have the answer to those questions. You didn't do that level of research. You're just using that uncertainty to spin a narrative that, oh, it must be that the vaccines are bad or something along those lines.
So naturally, you get COVID, they're going to die at a 10 times higher rate as well. This doesn't mean the vaccine worked. It just means the people who opted for the vaccines were.
But it also doesn't mean the vaccine doesn't work either. Basically, the only point that you're making is that based on that nugget of information, we can't say one way or the other. Oh, okay, that's okay. But there's a lot of other studies out there. And the correlation doesn't mean causation, but it is important to look at.
healthier. There's no.
And by the way, I've been consistent on that point this entire time. Every time they brought up a correlation thing, I made the point that, hey, that correlation is interesting. It creates an interesting question to look into. Did we do any further research into it? Because if we didn't, then you spinning a whole narrative based off of like, oh, well, we don't know. Well, now you're just implying something you do know, but trying to do it in a way where you're leveraging information that we don't know.
No need anywhere in the world that I could find when the COVID vaccines rolled out. What's supposed to happen is you look at all-cause deaths, you look at COVID deaths, and when they roll out the vaccine, whatever the trajectory it is, it's supposed to have a knee in it where it then flatlines as soon as they roll out the vaccine. Guess what?
I wouldn't probably not as soon as. It depends on the rate that you roll out that that vaccine, right? Herd immunity isn't going to be reached right away. That's going to take some time. That's probably a lagging indicator, and we do see from the data that I just looked up right now in multiple countries, that you do see the rate of excess death taper off post-pandemic. But the question again is going to be like, what causes that drop off? Is that drop off a natural thing? Is it due to the vaccination? Right? I'm open to going one way or the other. My understanding is that all the evidence seems to point towards the vaccination helped, make the excess deaths plateau and then bring them back down to a stable level. Now, do I know that 100%? No, I don't. But also, you haven't presented any information that would be that, oh, vaccines were actually not helping with that. All the evidence seems to point in that direction. You haven't actually illustrated a reason why I should believe the opposite. You just keep hinting at, well, there's little pieces of information that we're unsure about yet. Okay, cool. We're unsure about that specific thing that you're bringing up. The only point that you've made is a neutral point. You haven't made a point in your favor. You haven't completely debunked the other side. You're just saying, hey, there's these other questions we'd like to ask. Okay, cool. Then look into it. Come back to me when you figure out the answer to that question.
What? That need didn't happen anywhere in the world. Isn't that what's in the world having the highest increase in COVID infections in the world? We don't know. You know what? That's.
And we were going to find no association to autism. We have to call it the Big Six. It should be called the.
It's a very simple thing to see what's going on here. He's right, it is a war, and it's a war.
Paper and disappear. And we were going to find no association. You know what happened? 80 and choose a protocol. Times to recover. And Joe Verone is on like 3 editorial everything.
Let's start with Pierre on is ivermectin effective against COVID-19?
Okay, so they already wrapped up. They're going to talk about ivermectin. Just so you know, I'm not going to dive into this. There's a few studies I think that came out after the pandemic that looked. Ivermectin, by the way, this is the whole problem with the ivermectin thing. When the pandemic was first going on and people were throwing out ivermectin out there, I think it's fair to say, hey, look, ivermectin has been effective at other things in the past. The specific mechanism for why it would be effective and why it may be effective for COVID-19. I think when I looked into that, it was like, okay, like it's a bit of a long shot, but it's not like, this isn't totally out of the realm of possibility. It's worth looking into. There's a difference between saying this is worth looking into versus I know for sure that this doesn't work and it's bad for you. Those are two different things. There's a difference between this is worth looking into and oh, I know for sure that the ivermectin is good for COVID-19. The right pushed ivermectin as, oh, you should take this instead of vaccines. We don't know about vaccines. Vaccines aren't good for you. You should take ivermectin for you instead. Ivermectin is good for you. It's going to help with COVID-19. They jumped the gun on that. And the point that I think most people were making about the right at the time wasn't that, oh, ivermectin is bad for you. Ivermectin is going to kill you. Ivermectin, has no potential, benefit in fighting COVID-19. I think the main point that most people were making about the right at the time period was that you guys are going all in on this ivermectin narrative when you don't know that that's the case. You're just making shit up. You're just throwing fucking darts at a wall. That was the point that we made. And it turned out afterwards that when they did research ivermectin's usefulness with COVID-19, my understanding, most papers that looked into that question found that no, it wasn't. Now, that's not to say that it was bad for you. It's just to say that it didn't really do anything to help you with COVID. Sorry.
Yeah, so let me tell you.
So, Dan, when you don't have that as an expert,
you want to be able to compare them accurately, so that it's not just statistics, which you did.
I looked at that I choose with people who are. Do you understand the groups are complete
to make sure they are full trials? What?
They're randomized to you. Comparable in the outbreaks of. Do you remember when
dying might be different in each group?
Do you know what their difference is?
This is boring.
Do you, Steve? Because you had to control for them. What's
the of?
We're just going to say this
is to normalize the cohorts so that we take away the differences in the cohorts. And so what
are you controlling for age, socioeconomic status, smoking status? Are you controlling for pre-existing conditions? Are you controlling for health-seeking behavior?
All right, guys. I think you guys.
I don't need to. I don't need to. Are you controlling for age? Are you controlling for... All of these are important. This is the point that I was making, is that you want to isolate to make sure there isn't another factor, there isn't another thing going on at the same time that is the actual reason why you see the increase or the decrease in a given stat. And this guy's arguing like, oh, no, we shouldn't look into that.
Did you say you don't
Or we don't need to look into it.
need to? Did you just say you don't need to?
You guys, let's hang on for.
Okay. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt because I don't feel like breaking down and watching all of this, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt that he had a good reason why we don't need to look into that control. It's just kind of a silly statement to make.
Let's hang on for a second. Now, I'm going to ask you guys, we only have 6 minutes until we're at 90 minutes. And that's kind of what everyone agreed to. Do any of you object to staying on stage for a little longer to at least touch one more topic?
I'm good for however long.
How do you feel? We'll cut it. So let's start with Pierre.
Okay, so they didn't have closing statements for this topic. They just moved on to the next one. Okay, anyways. I mean, that was an interesting debate. That's all I'm really going to watch for. That's all I'm going to say for it. It's very clear to me. I don't know if it's clear to the audience necessarily, but I think it's very clear to me that the people on the right side, like, what they have is a lot of, like, emotional stories. They have anecdotes. They have very niche, specific scientists or papers that they refer to. And basically all of their argument basically boils down to this. It looks like this. Let me draw a picture. I think a picture will illustrate the point that I'm making. We have COVID-19, and we have the vaccine. We have all this information about it. Let's say all of the information is represented by... How can I increase the line size? Bro, let me change the size of this pencil. No? Alright, whatever. Can I do it this one? Oh, nice. Okay. So all of the information around the COVID-19, the vaccine, whatever, exists in this circle. And let's paint it blue, because blue is a based superior color. And all the red represents all of the... So the blue represents, like, basically the scientific consensus. And the red represents the information that goes to the contrary. The right-wing narratives, the right-wing studies, right? And what the Pierre guy and the other guy, the Steve Wozniak guy, do is they focus only, and they focus the entire conversation around this area here in the red. And you're ignoring all this other information. You're ignoring all the counterpoints to this information. You're ignoring all the body of research and information to the contrary. Right? But if you can keep the entire conversation right here in this box, you could make it seem like there's a very strong argument against the vaccines, against the mainstream narratives on COVID-19 or whatever. That's why they rely on anecdotes instead of data, because data is going to represent all the information here. Anecdotes are going to represent small little discrete stories in the middle. That's why they rely on cherry-picked studies, individual little studies, instead of all the information out here. Thousands and shit. And they want to keep the conversation right there. Not only that, but there were particular terminology, especially at the beginning of this debate, that they didn't know, that they should know as doctors. The memory B and C cells was unacceptable, unforgivable for a doctor, especially on this topic, to not know what those mean. That shows so much about where your mind is at. And a lot of their arguments, again, break down to, hey, this study over here, like, it didn't look at this thing, or we don't have information on this. And it's like, okay, cool. That's an interesting question. That's an interesting just asking questions that you're doing there. But you're not actually giving me an argument for why all of the information over here on this side is incorrect, while your information right here on this side is true. All you're doing is you're finding the neutral information in the middle that we're still not 100% sure about. And you're saying, oh, basically because there's these questions that haven't been answered yet, and I haven't bothered to look into them because I don't really want to know the answer to that question. I just want to use it to imply that unless we talk about all the information here, this lack of information we know means that I'm right and you're wrong. Well, wait a second. Wait a fucking second here. Because we don't know actually the answer to these questions yet in this box right here. How do you know that all is going to line up with your arguments on your side if you haven't looked into it yourself yet, if you haven't answered that questions, how do you know that if we don't look into all this, it's actually going to confirm everything that we already know? That all the information that we have that's all pointing in one direction right now. And by the way, which was more likely? Do you think the information here is going to point in this direction or in that direction? If everything else that we've looked into it so far points in this direction, do you think that when we look into this information you haven't looked into yet, do you think we're going to find that it confirms your biases? Or if it's going to confirm like the prevailing information so far? It's possible that it points in this direction, but the trick that you're playing is you're implying that it probably is. When realistically, if you look at all of the body of evidence, the entire body, not just focusing on the small square here, if you look at all of the available evidence, most likely this is just going to wind up, when we look into it, wind up reinforcing what we already know from all the information that we've gathered so far. All right. And so basically that's the entire conversation in my mind. That's what it looks like to me. That's going to be it for this stream. I think I'll stream some video games a little bit more casual in a little bit here, but I need to log off, shift gears. This shit is like, it's mentally frying. It's just kind of exhausting. It's just endless streams of just asking questions and just bringing up random nitpicks and misinformation and exaggerations. And by the way, these guys literally, go back and watch the video. There are instances in here where they're just straight up lying or they're straight up making up information or exaggerating. People that are doing that, just because they move on to another topic and they start bringing up another topic about some information that you haven't heard before, keep in mind, these are people that you already know lie and exaggerate and mislead about information. So it's probably going to be the case that anything else that they tell you is also probably also misinformation, but you just need to dive into it and look into it deeper. And you're going to find, the trick most of the time isn't whether they're lying or not. The trick is figuring out how they're lying. What specifically are they doing to mislead or misrepresent information? Because that's usually what it is. Usually they're just coming up with elaborate ways of misleading the public. Anyway, so that's basically it for now. We're going to move on. I'll catch you guys later. Maybe do some like video game stream or something. Until then, catch you later.